Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we continue our Fantasy Files series with a look at the worst case scenario for every top 12 quarterback via the PFF consensus ranks. Look, as someone that has watched every football game over the past 2 years, and plenty of football games before that, but I do make an effort, have over the last 2 years and many years forward to go back and watch every single game. I spend far too much time on Excel, PFF Ultimate, all that. I think you can make a good case for why almost every player in the NFL is good because they're a professional freaking athlete. Of course, they're good. When we say things like this guy sucks, this guy isn't as good, it's all relative to a bunch of incredible athletes. And maybe that's just common knowledge, sure. But for example, backup Pittsburgh Steelers running back Kalen Ballage. Well, he thrived away from Adam Gase last year, theoretically has 3-down ability. Look at that size-speed combo. Why couldn't it work out? How about Hunter Renfrow, who has the catch radius of a house cat? Well, he does rank 25th in yards per route run, ahead of guys like DK Metcalf, Adam Thielen, and CeeDee Lamb last year. How about even my guy, backup, pains me to say that, New York Jets tight end Chris Herndon, one of just 4 rookie tight ends to average at least 8 yards per target since 2000. I made like a 1.5-minute long highlight reel of Sam Darnold's rushing highlights. You can make a case for almost anyone. We do this all the time. That's why it's almost annoying at a point when you look at the top 50 receivers in rankings, and you can theoretically make a case for each of them having a good year. So we're not doing that today. We're doing the opposite. I'm going through the worst case scenario for all of the top 12 quarterbacks. This is not my full opinion on these guys. The point of this exercise is to show the potential downside after the majority of us have spent most of this offseason simply talking about the upside. So next 4 episodes, this one should be out on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I'm not going to, mess around with this long of an intro for those ones. So just realize these are not my full thoughts on these guys. Please, for the love of God, don't try to act like I'm out on Patrick Mahomes. This is simply the bad potential scenarios that could grace these guys. Now, I'm not going to really go into saying, oh, this guy can get hurt. Again, one of my 10 tips for fantasy drafts, much bigger difference between being injury prone and already injured. If a guy's already banged up, like Saquon Barkley, for example, well, that's a different subject. But that's something maybe we could talk into this, but in general, I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes is, worst case scenario is tearing his ACL on the first play of the season. That would be, a short podcast, and we could just say that with everyone. So without further ado, how the 2021 season could go wrong for every top 12 quarterback. For Patrick Mahomes, we could see maybe his rushing usage dip. I mean, this was something that he was having a ton of success with last year, really ever since he had the 2019, I think it was a knee injury that limited him. Did not see him running as much in the regular season, but one of the reasons why Clyde Edwards-Helaire and company weren't having all that success near the goal line, Patrick Mahomes is always a threat to get in on his own. And, while Josh Allen is someone where I've said, hey, the Bills have, 258 million reasons to no longer feature him around the goal line. Well, the Chiefs also now have 503 million reasons to maybe give Patrick Mahomes a few less, read options, speed options around the goal line. I believe when he got hurt against the Browns, that was on a similar design QB run, something to keep an eye on. Also could just see the touchdown rate dip a little bit. In 2018, he had an 8.6% touchdown rate, 2020, 6.5%. 2019, he had a 5.4%, led to him scoring just 26 passing touchdowns in a little fewer than 14 games of action. So I don't really see Kansas City going anywhere in terms of the league's upper echelon, but perhaps, more Clyde, less touchdown conversion rate. Mahomes doesn't throw, as many touchdowns as we're used to, isn't forced to throw the ball 40 times per game. Josh Allen, how it could go wrong. We see the guy that looked we see more of Josh Allen from 2018, 2019 as opposed to 2020. Really great stat from Marcus Mosher, who's a great follow on Twitter if you guys haven't checked him out. But Marcus went through, and somehow we have stats for Josh Allen going back to his JV days at Fireball High School. So in 2011, Josh had a 59.5% completion rate throwing to JV receivers. And in every single year, going to varsity at Fireball, Reedley Community College, Wyoming. Even his first 2 years with the Bills, he never completed over 60% of his passes. Now last year, 68.7%. Does that mean Josh Allen is now going to flirt with 70% completion rate every year? Or do we see a little bit in between the guy, that we saw just take over the league for large parts of 2020? Also similar to Mahomes, Bills, 258 million reasons to not feature Josh as much near the goal line. I get it. Josh is always going to have some of that DJAF YOLO ball in him. He's going to be taken off on his own plenty. With that said, only Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton have more design rush attempts inside the 10-yard line since 2018. Josh Allen has 25 rushing touchdowns since he came into the league. I'm not sure he's going to score 8 per year. Hey, even in 2018, 2019, this guy was still a fantasy QB1. Just saying, he might not be able to replicate his overall QB1 status if we don't see the same sort of uses near the goal line, and maybe his efficiency as a passer drops off just a little bit. QB3, Lamar Jackson. I think the 2020 passing struggles could persist potentially, even though we got, new receivers in the offense. It is surprising to actually see Lamar still post a 6.9% touchdown rate in 2020 after he led the league with a 9% mark in 2019. So, adding Sammy Watkins, hurt version of Rashad Bateman, Tylan Wallace, they're good. They aren't necessarily, that just world-beating, Chris Godwin type of receiver we were hoping to get into Baltimore. Maybe Rashad Bateman is the wide receiver one we've all been hoping Lamar Jackson could have. Maybe not. Remains to be seen. Also a chance Lamar doesn't run for 1,000 yards every single year. We have seen his, just 16-game pace for rush attempts decrease every year. It makes sense as Lamar continues to, just get more comfortable in the NFL that the rush attempts go down. If the rush attempts go down, suddenly we're looking at less of a cheat code than we've seen over the past few years of his career. QB4, Kyler Murray. He said it himself. He doesn't want to run as much in 2021. Now, Lamar Jackson said that last offseason as well, but perhaps Kyler is a good enough passer to actually not have to go back to his plan B. And maybe the passing upside goes south. I mean, if you talk to Cliff Kingsbury, it sure sounds like A.J. Green is the number 2 receiver in Arizona. If for some weird reason they decide to really feature the corpse of A.J. Green 100 plus times, that could be problematic for Kyler's efficiency. And yeah, we'll see, people, because it was a very different quarterback that we saw in the first half of last season before Kyler suffered the shoulder injury compared to after. So Kyler, similar to Josh, like he's going to have great fantasy numbers pretty much regardless of if he's the most used rushing quarterback or if he slides down to, just the 5th or 6th most frequent rusher. But that is the difference between him flirting with an overall QB1 outcome and, again, just settling as more of a high-end QB1. Dak Prescott, this is one of those situations where we do have to worry about the injury to an extent. The Cowboys social media is coming out and telling us, do not worry about the second MRI Dak has to get. Orlando Scandrick, who played for the Cowboys for a long time amongst other teams, did come out and say that typically you always get this second MRI. You don't just get one. Hey, Orlando Scandrick sure knows a hell of a lot more about usual, coming back from injury in the NFL than I do. So I'm not saying that I am overly worried about the shoulder myself, but that could be one of the ways where it goes downhill for Dak. Also got to wonder, is he going to be the exact same guy coming back from that absolutely horrific ankle injury? I mean, this guy has 24 rushing scores since 2016. We could now, similar to Josh and, Mahomes, Cowboys have 240 million reasons to be more protective of their franchise signal caller. Wouldn't be shocked if some of those read options inside the 5-yard line just turn into straight dives for Zeke. QB6, Russell Wilson. This one's pretty easy. The guy we saw in the second half of 2020 is on full display in 2021. I've heard good things out of Seahawks camp with Shane Waldron, emphasizing tempo, getting the receivers more involved in intermediate areas of the field. If anyone should be able to solve the Rams, method for shutting down Russ, it should be the ex-Rams passing game coordinator. Still need to actually see it come to fruition before we know that Russ can get back to cooking, because as great as he was in that first half of 2020, excellent article on PFF.com from January by Seth Galena pointed out so much of that was based on more of these unstable plays, like off, getting out of the pocket, throwing on the run, and just throwing a bunch of deep balls. So, hey, Russ has, made a career off that to an extent. Still not something that he should necessarily be holding his hat on as, being capable of ripping that off week after week after week, year after year after year. QB7, we got Justin Herbert. And yeah, I mean, look, with Herbert, when you look at, again, some of these stable stats, that's where things get a little more problematic. He was incredible under pressure. The thing is, pressure stats, we expect those to come back to earth year after year. Yeah, the Chargers' offensive line is looking far better than they were last year. They still come in at, 18th in PFF's offensive line rankings, and that's being fairly generous. Maybe they can get better, but it's very hard to go from terrible to more than below average just in a single year. Still need to develop chemistry and all that. I'm also not positive we're going to see Herbert, go for 234 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns every single year. I understand, far more athletic than we gave him credit for at Oregon. With that said, how many times can I say that in a freaking sentence? I'm not positive, again, we're going to see him just consistently be this run-first quarterback. That's great for the Chargers and his future progression. I just think there's a difference between Herbert, Kyler, and like Russ. Like, he just doesn't have the same sort of run-first attitude. In fantasy land, that's not great. So Herbert's someone I actually have been sliding down the ranks a little bit as we go on. It's just going to be hard for him to be as good as he was last year in fantasy land, even if he takes some steps forward as a real-life passer. QB8 Aaron Rodgers, his astronomical touchdown rate comes back to earth. Look, last year or 2011, like pick one of those years. Those were the best versions of Aaron Rodgers we have ever seen. If he functions closer to the guy we saw in 2018, 2019, he'll just be more of a borderline QB1. As Rodgers said on the Pat McAfee show this last offseason, his down years are still career years for a lot of guys. And then, in no scenario do I see Aaron Rodgers taking a step back as a real-life quarterback. But as amazing as he was last year, still just a fantasy QB4. If the touchdown rate goes down just a little bit, I think Aaron Rodgers could be more of a borderline QB1 as opposed to weekly top 5 candidate. QB9, Jalen Hurts. All right, I understand PFF, our social media presence. Every now and then, maybe you'll say more frequently than that, we have some not great tweets go out. I do think it's a little hot takey at times, but people trying to dunk on PFF for saying Joe Flacco is now, challenging for the QB1 job, and we showed the Quez Watkins screen for a touchdown. It was a joke. We are smarter than that. Give us some amount of credit. Are you kidding me? Joe Flacco threw a screen to Quez Watkins, who went 70 yards for a touchdown. And we said, Joe Flacco coming for the QB1 job. And we got every freaking person in the industry talking about, are you kidding me? These guys at PFF, what do they know? You're playing yourself if you can't even catch the humor in that. So please, like I said, there are a lot of tweets that you could pull up from PFF Fantasy, whatever, that I will say, okay, touche. Not the best thing to maybe put out there on the old Twitter sphere, but that one, like, come on, you're playing yourself. It's a joke. Calm down, chill out. With that said, Jalen Hurts, how it can go wrong. Joe Flacco, Nick Mullins, these are best case backup quarterbacks. Still not exactly, best case backup quarterbacks in terms of, like, we didn't get a top 10 pick coming in to challenge Hurts for the job. Deshaun Watson isn't there by any stretch of the imagination. They still aren't terrible, though. I mean, let's look at the Rams, quarterback room for a second. Behind Matthew Stafford, we have guys like John Wolford, Bryce Perkins, and like Duck Hodges. It's better than that, I guess, is my only point. If Jalen Hurts continues to throw the ball as bad as he did last year, and he was statistically one of the bottom 5 quarterbacks, not that it really impacted the production. 2 games with over 300 yards. We don't care about how he gets the production in fantasy land. Style points don't change. But if Hurts really struggles to continue, really just continues, I guess, to be a bad passer and like bottom 5 in the league passer, despite the O-line improvements, despite Devontae and Jalen Reagor playing better, maybe Flacco, Mullins do get a chance to go in. And that's really the only way I see Hurts busting in a big way. It's if he loses the job, because when he run the ball as much as he does, it's just hard to bust in fantasy football land. So the only negative with Hurts, who I think, in that I haven't got a chance to watch every snap of that Eagles-Steelers game yet, but the few throws I did see Hurts make, he looked pretty good out there. I know the stat line wasn't incredible, but did see a couple nice downfield shots. So Hurts, with, again, all those rush attempts, it's very hard for him to bust if he can keep the job. The one murmur that does worry me just a little bit is how much heat there seemed to be behind the Deshaun Watson, the Philly news. It seems like far too much is going on. Like, I don't really expect Watson to play for at least the first 8 weeks of this year, like if I had to guess. But I don't know. So the fact there is just a little bit of smoke that the Eagles are interested in him, it's just not great for Hurts' potential future with the franchise, at least for 2021, though. I think he's A-OK. QB10, Tom Brady. Father time finally catches up. The guy is 44 years old. At some point, like, the arm strength has to go down a little bit. And hey, the dude is so freaking smart. Maybe his arm could turn into, 2015 Peyton, and he could still just dink and duck his way around the field. But that's how it happens. That's how Tom Brady comes back and looks like a mortal. But I don't know. He looks like a cyborg in that one picture he was taking with Dungy. So who knows? I will say, Brady just still getting 3 rushing touchdowns on those sneaks. Maybe that takes a little bit of a step back. Still very difficult to see it going wrong with Tom Brady. I saw Mina Kimes had Steven Ruiz, a fantastic writer and Twitter presence as well, on the podcast, and they were talking about the Buccaneers, and I think their takeaway on like the worst parts about this team were the offensive line and cornerback depth, not even the O-line or cornerback room, just the depth if guys happen to get hurt. So yeah, how could it go wrong for Brady? He gets old finally. Other than that, I don't see this, Tampa Bay offense having many problems moving the ball all season long. QB 11, Joe Burrow. The training camp gossip comes true. Burrow can't throw the ball, and everyone just comes back and dunks on Twitter saying, oh, hey, we should have known after that one training camp report in the first week of August that this offense wasn't going to be able to move the ball. And, with Burrow having a problem standing up behind the Bengals' flimsy O-line, maybe Zach Taylor implements more of a run-first offense, and then we lose that top-end volume, which is why we've been behind these Bengals from Jump Street. Like, Joe Burrow, I think he's fine at this point. Is he a great NFL quarterback yet? No, but he had the single most dropbacks in the league before he got hurt, just taking a natural little bit year 2 jump, which given the injury, not guaranteed. But all those receivers out there on a team that should be forced to play from behind fairly often with that atrocious defense, I still think Burrow has enough volume to get it done in fantasy land. And finally, QB 12, Ryan Tannehill. Departure of Arthur Smith leads to the Tannehill looking more like the guy in Miami as opposed to the all-star we've seen over the past 2 years. And maybe we get just even more Derrick Henry. If the defense takes a little step up, we're not going to see this team having such a discrepancy between their offense and defense in points per game. Last year, it was the Vikings, the Titans, and the Raiders as the teams with the biggest differences in points per game and points per game allowed. So if this team is just better overall and they're able to lean on Henry even more than they already have, I think that could hurt Tannehill. Because then if that efficiency decreases, if he becomes more of an average quarterback with efficiency, like that's how A.J. Brown and Jonnu and Ferkser and all these guys, and now Julio, their path to success on more limited volume than guys that, were drafting behind them is for Tannehill to remain this world beater in the efficiency realm of things. So personally, I don't think losing Arthur Smith is going to change to this incredibly different looking offense. So I think Tannehill will be just fine. But hey, similar to Josh Allen, how much can we say the last year and a half of Tannehill is what we're going to see in the future compared to the first 6-7 years of his career? We'll find out. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Appreciate you guys listening as always. And just want to say, people, I'm pumped because fantasy football season is here. And no one can prepare you better for your draft than PFF. For just $9.99, get access to PFF's Fantasy Football Draft Guide, player rankings and projections. Check out my rankings, of course, all of PFF's locked article content, cheat sheets for your fantasy draft, and more. Again, that's PFF's Fantasy Suite for just $9.99. Just smarter than your league mates this season. People, I have, and they were updating, I update them at least once a week. My rankings are on PFF.com. You go to PFF.com, go under fantasy, then go to fantasy rankings, and you can see right there 2021 draft rankings, PPR, and you got IH as the first column, or not first column, I'm 5 down now. Unreal. You can see my rankings, IH, right under, the fantasy freaking football draft tools. So I had someone slide into the DMs and say that how I hadn't been giving these specific ranks out like I did last year in team previews. So if you, haven't caught the fantasy files, if you want my specific ranks before your drafts, again, pff.com/fantasy/draft/rankings, and just $9.99, you get the whole fantasy suite. So you can also see what our other experts think, plenty of tools in the back end as well. I also want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax's free fantasy football league manager is the most customizable, easy to use, and feature-rich platform in the entire industry. PFF is gearing up to play our leagues on Fantrax this season. If you're coming from another site, that is no problem. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues completely free. Create a free account now using promo code PFF at fantrax.com/PFF and get a chance to win a trip to any regular season game this year for you and your entire league, plus $6,000. So look, if you can go to a game for free, I think you need to go to Las Vegas. That new stadium looks dope. And even if, the Raiders aren't the hottest team in the world, go to freaking Vegas. And looking at the calendar right now, man, oh man, maybe just push it, towards January 9th. That's going to be week 18. Ooh, Super Bowl's going to be later this year. I'm just realizing that. But Chargers at Raiders, week 18, January 9th. Go down to Vegas. have $6,000 to gamble, and you're out there in the sun as well. So get away from the cold weather if you're on the East Coast. Again, that's promo code PFF at fantrax.com/PFF. Go get yourself that free trip to any regular season game plus $6,000 for you and your entire league. Sure sounds like a fun time to me. It's going to wrap up this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Appreciate you guys listening each and every week. Only a handful more of these. Next Friday, I'm recording this right now on the 13th, but next Friday, the 20th, is going to be our last fantasy file. I will, of course, still have plenty of podcasts going on throughout the week, but that is going to end our 100 pods in 100 days. Complete, just wormhole I've kind of gotten into throughout this off season. So been trying to keep them evergreen. Please feel free to go back and listen to older ones if you're, wondering about a different subject. And, of course, I'll still have Andrew, Dwayne, and plenty of other guests on in the meantime. So I'm Ian Hartitz, and until next time, take care, everybody.